one.
Okay, thanks. This is Senate Government Operations. It is the 12th of February, actually Lincoln's birthday. And as Senator Rahm reminded us this morning, Lunar New Year. And it also is the day when the Great Backyard Bird Count begins. So you can go in your backyard and start counting your birds, I guess.
Already.
Anyway, so here we are. And so we have on our schedule today to look more at the retirement issue. And Senator Clarkson has been kind enough to get us someone to talk to us about kind of comparing our retirement pension plan and the benefits with other states, or mostly states around us, I believe. So we will talk about that. And then I know that we have Mike O'Neill here, and we have Steve Howard, and I assume that Jeff Fannin will be joining us at some point. But I have just learned, and my thought originally was that we would have this conversation and then we would talk about whether we really felt that we had the time in the next 2 weeks to come up with some kind of a compromise plan, a meaningful plan that everybody could agree on. My thought was that, and I had talked to a number of people about this, about not doing that, but instead coming up with a solution that would have us form, and I hate to say a summer study committee, but to do some really intense work around what it means and what we have to do now and what we don't have to do now, that everybody could agree on, because I'm not sure that in the next 2 weeks we could come up with something that was equitable to our retirees, our employees, and our pension funds. So that was my thought. But I was just informed that the House has set up a retirement study committee that is working, because they have 11 members and are there all day, and that they are taking this on and they will come up with something before crossover. I remain a bit skeptical, but they said they're very close to an agreement with everyone. So if that's the case, so we will, after today, we won't be doing anything more with retirement until we get something from the House. So committee, do you have any questions about? Yes, Senator Collmore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I find that refreshing to hear about the colleagues in the other body being able to come up with something based on what I saw in that hour. And I thought he did an excellent job of keeping it at a level where even if you didn't really understand a lot of the ins and outs of investing, you could still sort of understand the problem that we have. But what I took out of that is there isn't any one, I think he called it silver bullet. There isn't any one solution, that the variables involved number at least 4 or 5, and it's going to take, let me just say again, I find it refreshing that the other body could come up with a solution at this late hour, because I think you might be right that it's going to take a lot longer than that. And hopefully all of the parties, all of the stakeholders are going to be in the same room. I think you indicated in our best world, we would have said, go to the cafeteria and try to find out what we agree on. And so anyway, interesting.
Yeah, and we have, and now Jeff Fannin has joined us also. So we have and Erica Wolfing is with us also. So we have representatives of all the groups that would be in the cafeteria working on this. And I guess all I was told was that they are very close to an agreement that everybody agrees with. And so Senator Clarkson?
So I wish all these stakeholders had let us know that they were working on this with the House. That would have helped.
I think that's not their responsibility. That's our responsibility. It was my responsibility to know what the House was doing. And I did not realize that I knew that they were having, taking a lot of the same testimony in preparation for whatever we were going to do. But I did not realize that they had a special committee that was working with the three. And I think here of the four kind of stakeholder groups, it would be the pension, the retirement office, the VSEA, the VTA, and the NEA. And that I think of those as the four groups that need to be in the cafeteria talking. And so my understanding is that they're very close. I just would, before we go to Keith's presentation here, I would just ask a very quick, of the four stakeholder groups here, is there a very close, almost agreement?
Stevie is shaking his head now, and
Those, Jeff?
no.
Mike?
Madam Chair, I could say I'm not aware of any discussion. This is the first I've heard of a potential agreement.
Very interesting.
We have not discussed anything of substance really that we would ever agree to. And we know there's a special committee being appointed, but we've never met with them.
Oh, it's just being appointed?
No, I don't know. All I know is what I was told this morning is that they were very close. And so we might just want to wait until they come up with something. And Erica, are you aware of it being very close to being settled?
Good afternoon, Senator White. So I know that the treasurer has had conversations with leadership on both the House and the Senate side. To be honest, I was not privy to those conversations, so I don't feel comfortable characterizing them on her behalf, but I do know she's planning to join a little bit later, and I'm sure would be happy to speak to that for our office, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you. I just didn't know if. So what I would say perhaps is that we will today talk about how ours stack up against others, because we have Mr. Brainerd with us. And then I would say that we will, I guess I'll hear more. I just wanted to tell you that because I was going to take it off next week's agenda, and I wanted everybody to know why I was taking it off the agenda. Gail, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. Is anyone in this call aware of a person named William Krywald? He is in our waiting room.
Say the name again.
Hi, Gail.
He works for Beth.
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Don't let him in.
Yeah, I think he's passed. I think he's been fully vetted by the Troopers Association, the VSEA, and the NEA, so he's probably okay.
We're vetting you. We're vetting you, Eric. Is that
so?
Oh, William.
So, so that I just wanted everybody to know exactly what I knew at this point, and that's all I know. So I would say that unless by the end of next week, there really is agreement by everybody that we should then consider something that would set up more time to do it. But we'll deal with that by the end of next week, I guess, hoping that as Senator Collmore says, it is refreshing to know that the other body has come up with agreements. Okay.
But of course,
Senator Polina?
the people they've come close to agreement with don't seem to know that there's an agreement or closeness. So it's interesting.
Or that they're even meeting.
Right.
Well, that is true, but that being
But we'll give
said,
them the benefit of the doubt.
yes, we will. We know that miracles can happen. So with that, let's look at, Allison, would you like to introduce our guest?
Oh, heavens no, Gail was the one who kindly made this marriage. And Keith Brainerd, welcome to Vermont and back east. And would you be kind enough to introduce yourself, who you represent, what you do, and the perspective you bring in terms of comparing, looking at Vermont with the perspective of what the rest of the country is doing, so that we're comparing apples to apples a bit, as much as possible.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Hello, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Nice to be with you, as it were. And I am research director for NASRA, which is the National Association of State Retirement Administrators. Our members are roughly 90 directors of statewide retirement systems. We have a handful of local retirement systems as well. At least one in every state. Some we have 3 or 4 members. These are the individuals who administer statewide pension plans. And what I do with my colleague, who's not here today, but his name is Alex Brown, is we conduct research on the range of issues pertinent to administering pension plans. That includes benefits, investments, actuarial matters, legal issues, et cetera, the full range. And one of the things we do is keep an inventory of pension reforms that are enacted among states, and the last 10 years in particular have been a particularly active period in terms of pension reforms, both and really unprecedented, both in terms of the number. Just about every state in the country has reformed their pension plan at least once over the last 10 years, and also in their magnitude. We've seen some pretty significant changes made over the last 10 years or so. So I was approached by Senator Clarkson and asked to appear before you and to provide some comparisons with how the retirement benefits for Vermont teachers and state employees compare with those around the country. And I'm honored to be here with you.
Thank you. And we did see some of your charts in our noon presentation. We had a Pensions 101, and our Joint Fiscal Office used a number of your charts.
Oh,
so
great.
Thank you.
Thanks for saying
All
so.
right, so take it away. Does anybody have any questions first before we get started, just about the association or anything else, and then we'll just launch into it? Okay, seeing none.
No, we're just glad you exist.
And
Great.
maybe I'm a really visual person, so if someone could put your website to your organization in the chat, that would help me. I don't know.
I think, did you send, Keith, did you send something that Gail has posted on our website?
Yes.
Great.
It's in an email too.
And feel free to follow up with me individually by email or phone. And we've got a wealth of more information than you have received today. I'd be happy to speak with you individually, or you can look around our website.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I have 7 or 8 minutes of prepared remarks, if that's acceptable to the group. And after that, I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Sure.
And as we've discussed, I have provided 2 handouts, one of which is a 2-pager titled Normal Cost Analysis for the Vermont State Employees and Teachers Retirement Systems, and the other is titled Actuarial Funding Level of 120 Public Pension Plans. In general, I would say that pension benefits for Vermont state employees and especially teachers are a bit less generous compared to their counterparts around the country. And Vermont state employees contribute a larger portion toward the cost of these benefits, as do teachers. This can be seen partly by looking at the handout titled Normal Cost Analysis for State Employees and Teachers Retirement Systems. The normal cost is the cost of benefits that are accrued each year by employees participating in the plan. The normal cost does not include any costs associated with the plan's unfunded liability. It's just the benefits that are accrued each year. And the fact that the Vermont State Employees Plan normal cost is lower than the median is an indication that this plan's lower level of benefits is lower than comparable plans, even more so for the teachers, notably lower than the median level. The level of retirement benefit is primarily a function of the plan's eligibility criteria for receiving a full retirement benefit, and also the retirement multiplier. And in Vermont, state employees hired since 2008 must reach age 65 or attain the so-called Rule of 87 to qualify for a full or unreduced retirement benefit. The Rule of 87 requires the employee's age and years of service to total 87. So for example, a worker reaching age 60 with 27 years of service would qualify under that standard. These retirement eligibility criteria are somewhat more modest than the national averages, which comports with the normal cost for state employees as a bit below the national average also. The retirement multiplier for state workers is 1.67%, meaning that state employees accrue a retirement benefit equal to 1.67% of their final average salary for each year they work. And this rate also is a bit below the national average. Eligibility criteria for retirement for teachers in Vermont are similar. The multiplier for teachers rises after 20 years of service, and retirement eligibility for teachers is age 65, like with state employees, or the Rule of 90, which is a little higher than that for state employees. That would require a teacher to work an additional year and a half compared to state employees to qualify for a full retirement benefit. Two other factors regarding the plans for teachers and state employees I'd like to mention briefly are the highest average salary period and the cost of living adjustment. The highest average salary period is the period over which the retirement benefit is calculated. That period for Vermont teachers and state employees is 3 years. Most other states that did not already have a final average salary period of 5 years have moved there in recent years. 5 years is easily the most typical period. Increasing the period over which the retirement benefit is calculated will produce a marginally lower retirement benefit and plan cost. Two states that we know of, Illinois and Florida, use periods longer than 5 years. They use 7 and 8. And the cost of living adjustment for both teachers and state employees is tied to the actual rate of inflation with a minimum of 1% and a max of 5%. And that's fairly typical of plans that provide an automatic COLA, and not all do. You should be aware that an automatic COLA is a relatively expensive benefit provision. A rule of thumb is that an automatic 3% COLA will add about 25% to the cost of the benefit. Since the COLA for Vermont teachers and state workers is tied to the rate of inflation, and the plan assumes a rate of inflation of 2.3%, I believe, the cost of that COLA benefit would be somewhat less than that 25% rule of thumb. But in my view, the most important factor of providing a COLA is that its cost be paid for, which Vermont does, or certainly has done for the last 12 or 15 years. Referring again to the normal cost handout, the second chart on that page, located at the top of the second page, shows that Vermont state employees are paying about 2/3 of the normal cost of their benefit, and teachers are paying over 80% of their normal cost. Compared to their counterparts around the country, these rates are higher than the median or midpoint of 50%. Everybody with me still?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
thank you.
The employer's contribution for state workers, which was around 12.25% in fiscal 19, which is the last year we have comprehensive data, is used to pay the remaining 3.2% of the normal cost. That 3.2 is what's left over after the employees have made their contribution. And then the employer contribution also includes the cost to amortize or pay off the plan's unfunded liability. This 3.2% for the normal cost is shown in figure 3, at the bottom of page 2, plus around 9% to amortize the unfunded liability. For teachers, the employer's contribution in fiscal 19 was around 19%, and all but about 1% of that is used to pay down the plan's unfunded liability. So about only 1% of what the employer is contributing is paying toward the actual benefit. The rest is being used to pay past benefits. You can see the employer's contribution toward the normal cost on the lower chart on the second page of the 2-page handout, that Vermont employers contribute about 1% toward the normal cost for teachers. So again, the big picture observation here is that Vermont teachers and state employees receive a benefit that is a bit below the national average for comparable employees. And these employees contribute a bit more than their national counterparts toward the cost of their benefit. Comparable employees here are general employees and school teachers, but not public safety personnel, firefighters and police officers, and not judges and other narrow groups of workers. And also general employees and school teachers who are participating in Social Security. They're grouped with the different folks who also do not participate in Social Security. Now, if I might, I'd like to make a couple of comments about pension reform. As you think about making changes, remember that there are 3 groups of pension plan participants that you can affect, and the reforms you make are likely to affect each group differently. Those reforms also will define any changes in pension liabilities and costs that you're able to generate. For example, if you modify benefits for new hires only, you will not affect the plan's unfunded liability or the amount that is owed, but for which assets have not yet been accumulated. Depending on such a change, you might begin to realize cost savings, but that savings will be gradual as new hires replace retiring and terminating employees. By contrast, if you modify benefits for current active members, people who currently are working, depending on the change, you can reduce unfunded liabilities. This is what Treasurer Pierce has proposed, chiefly by limiting the COLA for active state employees to the first $24,000 of benefit, and for all active teachers, along with some other changes. And finally, I'd like to point out that more than half of the liabilities in both the state employees and teachers plans are associated with those who have already retired or who have stopped working but who have not yet retired. And because such a large portion of the plan's liabilities are associated with that group of participants, adjusting the COLA for that group, that is retirees and those who have left service and likely will retire one day, even slightly, is likely to generate a more significant reduction in the plan's liabilities and cost than would be achieved by limiting any adjustments only to active employees. And that's the end of my prepared remarks. Happy to answer any questions.
Senator Colomar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Keith. That was very well done and very informative. And I appreciate the fact that from what you said, we're not as generous as other states in terms of what we're doing for both the teachers and the state employees. But we're not necessarily looking at that aspect of it. We're just trying to figure out how to fix what we have now. One of the things that the presentation we just watched over the lunch hour made a point of was that the stock market downturn, if you will, back in 08, 09, seemed to affect pensions drastically. And I'm wondering whether Vermont is in a very, very poor position in terms of the unfunded liability issue with respect to other states, or whether everybody sort of is trying to figure out a solution to this. In other words, are we an outlier in this unfunded liability situation, or are there other states that are grappling with it as well?
Okay, thank you, Senator. And to your first comment, which was really not a question, but I would like to comment on it, and that is, for sure, pensions are one component of compensation. And I certainly do not want to imply that you are competing with other states, because generally you're not, nor necessarily that you should provide a pension benefit that's commensurate in some way, shape, or form with other states. Just a comparison. You really have to look at the whole package, the take-home pay, other benefits, and so on. With regard to market volatility and the plan's overall funding level and so on, yes, the market decline of 08 to 09 was a watershed event for the public pension community. It reduced assets on average by about 25%, and everybody was hit during that period. I actually provided in my handout something I did not refer to, and I would ask if you would take a quick look at it, and that's the handout titled Actuarial Funding Level of 120 Public Pension Plans. I don't know if you have it in hard copy or on digital version, but at the top chart of that one pager is what I call a bubble chart.
Yeah.
And it's plotting 120 public pension plans. Combined, these plans represent 50 states and about 85% of all public pension liabilities in the country. And as the notation indicates, big bubbles represent big plans, smaller bubbles, smaller plans. And so they're all laid out here in order based on their actuarial funding level. And I've delineated the Vermont teacher retirement system and state employees retirement system on here. And the Vermont teacher retirement system, funded right around 55%, you can tell is certainly in the lower quartile of the nation as a whole. Vermont state employees is just a bit below the median, which is right around 72%. So that's quite a difference between those two, state employees and teachers. And obviously the state employees is closer to a national median, probably a more manageable problem. The state teachers plan is clearly where the bigger part of the problem lies.
So
Are those large bubbles, I'm just guessing, California, New York, maybe?
The big bubble, the Vermont state employees is CalPERS, the nation's largest public pension fund. And the larger bubble to its lower left is CalSTRS, the California State Teacher Retirement System, which is second largest. New York, Texas, Florida are some of the larger bubbles to the right of the CalPERS bubble.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I was curious. Thank you.
But to answer Brian's question, the outlier issue, it looks like the teachers are more of an outlier nationally than the employees.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I hate to even ask this question because I feel stupid. I should know the answer. But my understanding is that when we're talking about pension, we aren't including healthcare, and that so we're looking at two different things, and it would be interesting to see the comparison of healthcare benefits as it relates to pension benefits, because that is one of the reasons why the teachers are in such bad shape, is because we were taking the healthcare benefit portions out of the pension, out of the retirement funds. I mean, that wasn't said very eloquently, but am I right in that, is that we are not comparing health benefits here for retirees?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. And for what it's worth, retiree health care runs a really wide range, even much wider than pensions. So with retiree health care among states, we go from zero, literally no benefit provided, to a very robust benefit provided and everything in between. And similarly, the funding experience of retiree health care benefits is two things. One, much poorer relative to pensions. I think the best funded retiree healthcare benefit in the country is funded at maybe 40 or 45%. And also it runs a much wider range than pensions. So the bottom funded pension on the chart that I provided is funded around 15%, and after that they're into the upper 30s. There are many retiree healthcare benefits that are funded at less than 5%, which is pretty close to pay-as-you-go type territory.
Which is what we were doing with the teachers.
And yes, ma'am. And it's not unique to Vermont, I would say.
Yeah.
It also affirms the comment that we made earlier, which is that pensions are only one component of total compensation. And you have to look at the whole package.
Do you know where, just offhand, very quickly, do you know where we stand on that continuum of healthcare from zero to wonderful?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Senator Clarkson?
So, Jeanette, should we, if we're supposed to be looking at the entire compensation package for a retiree, should we, if we continue this, I mean, we'll continue it at some point, whether it's this year or next, we should also be looking at the healthcare as it complements the pension piece.
In terms of the benefit, but not, I mean, we're looking at how we fund the pension benefit. That's what these That's what this
I really-
conversation.
I realize that, but is our healthcare benefit equally challenged?
The teachers is,
Yeah, but not the employees.
I don't
I don't know.
think it is in the same way, and that would be Erica. Does anybody else have questions for Keith? And I'm also going to, just because we have him here, I'm going to open it up to questions for non-committee members. If anybody else has a question for Keith that they would like to pose. So Senator Clarkson?
Yeah, I guess I just, Keith, this has been terrific. Thank you very much. Can you give us any insight into New England and where we stand in the states around us? And actually Canada, which is of course our neighbor to the north, and if it has how it relates. Just curious. Do you have any sense about how we stack up in the New England, New York? I mean, we can see for one aspect with New York, but.
Well, New England's interesting. It's very much a mixed bag. New Hampshire is a Social Security state like Vermont, and so it's comparable in that way. And they face a funding challenge. They have a consolidated plan in which they've put all of the state employees and the teachers and many local government workers all into the same plan. So where Vermont tends to separate those into different plans, they're all combined there in New Hampshire. Their aggregate funding level is something on the order of 65% or so. And so they're struggling for sure. Maine is mostly a non-Social Security state. Maine in the late 1990s approved a state constitutional amendment requiring the state to amortize or eliminate the unfunded pension liability that was in place at that time. And so it's in the Constitution that what was unfunded at that time be gone by 2028 or so. And Maine has gone over that period of time from being a very terribly funded pension plan for state employees and teachers to being very well funded. And they're supposed to have eliminated that unfunded liability within the next 10 years or so. Vermont is struggling. Vermont has a relatively low funding level. They too have combined the plan for state employees and teachers. And just off the top of my head, I think the funding level of that plan is on the order of about 60%. They went through a very politically difficult period of reform about almost 10 years ago that was challenged repeatedly in court.
Keith, I think you said Vermont, but I
Yeah.
think.
I'm so sorry, Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, yeah.
Thank you.
Very sorry. I'll never make that mistake again. So Vermont is a very labor-friendly state, and when they enacted those reforms affected.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
I'm so sorry.
I thought you said you weren't going to do that again.
I
It's
know, and
okay,
I turned
don't-
right around and did it.
Don't compare us to
Yeah.
Rhode Island.
I'll never do it again. So Rhode Island's a very labor-friendly state, and the reforms that they enacted affected existing plan participants, and in a fairly significant way. And so there was a slew of lawsuits that took a few years to work through the system, and they ultimately did settle all of it. But Vermont remains a challenge with regard to funding their pension plans.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. I don't know why I have that in my head.
I don't know.
So-
We don't even border an ocean.
I know. It's
So-
indefensible.
I'm
One-
going to say, oh, go ahead.
One other, if I might, and that is Massachusetts. Massachusetts is thoroughly a non-Social Security state. And their funding level is not great. It's maybe 70–75%, but they have been making a concerted effort to ramp up their contributions. They have not historically made an appropriate level of employer contributions to their pension plans. And they've been systematically moving toward fully funding those over the last 15 years or so. Hope that's responsive to your question about New England states.
Yeah, thank you.
I could go on about Connecticut, New York. I could send you the data, whatever
Yeah.
you'd like.
I'm going to call on Senator Polina, but first I'm going to say, I'm glad Maine has been able to improve their situation, but what a stupid thing to put in a constitution. So anyway, Senator Polina.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I want to talk about Maine too for a minute. I know that the choices that we have before us are painful for someone somewhere along the line. I wonder if there's anything we can learn from Maine or the other states. I'm not saying we would want to replicate what they did, but I'm curious what they did to try to dig themselves out of the hole they're in. Is there a way to sort of summarize that in terms of other states?
Well, for Maine,
Are they
the biggest,
putting the burden on people already retired, or is it the current workers? I'm just curious where they looked for the balance.
well, in Maine, the biggest change they made was simply paying the required contribution. And that's what had the biggest effect, because like many other states, for many years, especially going back in the previous century, they just consistently failed to contribute appropriately. More recently, in the past few years, Maine enacted pension reforms that introduce risk sharing. And so the benefit levels and contribution rates for employees are a little bit flexible depending on the actuarial and investment performance of the plan.
So the contributions are flexible?
Yes, ma'am. The contributions for employees can rise and fall within a range depending on how the plan does.
Well, because we are paying our required contribution. I mean, we are keeping up with the ADAC.
We are now, but we were not.
Well,
And
but
that's
2007 we have been, and it hasn't helped us.
Well, that depends on some other factors as well, including, for example, the amortization method, the method that you're using to pay down the liabilities. And I'm sorry, I'm not certain how long you've been using the one you currently have in place, but it's possible.
I think 14, I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay. It's possible that prior to 14, you had what's called an open amortization method, which is akin to refinancing your mortgage every year. And so you start out with a 30-year mortgage, and the next year it's still 30 years, et cetera. And there are a number of states that did that, although states have been getting rid of that method over the last 10 years or so, and Vermont may be among those. And when you do that, you're really not making very much progress in eliminating your unfunded liability, and that may be a contributing factor in Vermont.
And I may be wrong here, but I thought that one of the big issues that we had, and I think Jeff Fannin is still with us, but I thought that one of the big issues that we had was the fact that we were combining somehow our healthcare benefits were being taken out of we weren't paying for those. And that so we really weren't even making the appropriate payments even then, because we were not doing what we should have been doing about the OPEB. I think that's what it's called. Other pension something benefits, whatever that stands for.
Other post-employment benefits.
Post-employment benefits. Yeah. So I think that those other states may not have been in that same position and may not have been doing the same thing. So does anybody else have questions for Keith? And I said I'm going to, if Jeff or anybody, if you have questions at all. And we know, we also know that in terms of our benefits being below and our contributions being higher than in other states, and both of them is what you said, that we also tend, not just with state employees and teachers, but with every other occupation and every other job in Vermont, tend to be underpaid compared to every place else in the country, including and even in New England. So
20%.
We're much lower for everybody.
We're cheap. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I put it that way, but
no, I mean, it's not a cheap state to live in. It's just we have a classic underpayment problem for all employees.
Yeah.
Senator, if I can intervene,
Yes.
we're thrifty. We're thrifty.
Thrifty, thank you. Thank you, Beth. That's right. Thrifty, that's what we are.
I've heard us many times, and in fact, I think Gould and Stearns, who are these wonderful performers in Brattleboro, did a thing called Vermont is a third world country, because we underpay so dramatically. Any more questions for Keith? So I thank you very much for joining us. This was helpful. It was particularly for me, it was helpful after having just had JFO do the pension 101 that they did at noon, and he's gonna do 2 more sessions for us. So
Madam
thank you.
Chairman, I appreciate the invitation, and senators, and hello, Treasurer. It's an honor to be here with you. Again, please feel free to reach out to me individually. I'd be happy to help you with any information you'd like. And I'm really sorry to have referred to Vermont in the context of Rhode Island.
It's okay.
You're forgiven. And Beth, our treasurer,
Thank you.
speaks very highly of your organization. So
Yeah,
She's
highly
very
of the
kind.
organization and highly of Keith. And I'm just going to be politically in trouble with this, but as long as you don't compare us to Illinois, I'm all set.
he did mention Illinois at one point.
But it's not in a favorable light.
So,
Okay.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Right.
So Beth, you weren't with us when I kind of made this announcement, I guess it was, at the very beginning of our meeting. And Erica was, and I don't know if she has told you what my understanding is that the House has a special committee that's been working on this, and they are very close, which is what I told, to having agreements, and that we don't need to concern ourselves until it comes to us. So I just, I throw that out because I had this on the agenda for again next week, but if that is the case, then I'm not sure we will do that. So you don't have to say whether we're very close or not, but I just wanted you to know that that's where, what I've been told.
Well, I'd be heartened if to hear that, but I recognize that a lot's going on, and that sometimes it's a little bit of the telephone game as you go through this. I think the unions, the employee groups are engaged, and I want to say I appreciate that very much. And I know that there is a work group over at the House. I don't know who's in the work group as a whole, but one member said to me before I did testimony in another committee, he said, I just got off a work group that you may know about. And I said, no comment. But I know they're working hard. I hear they're meeting twice a week. Yes.
I think it's a little confusing here because when I said this, all 3 of the union reps in our meeting nodded their heads that they didn't know about it.
Okay. And again,
So,
I'm not in the
okay.
in the end game on that.
Okay.
So I can't answer that. Part of our process was to get the report out, start the process, and recognizing that ultimately the General Assembly is going to make the changes, is to let that process go a little bit independent of us, a lot independent, because they need to hear from somebody besides Beth Pierce. And Keith Brainerd is a great person to talk to. I think that Chris, by the way, I had probably an hour conversation with him last night, the JFO individual, and I think that he, myself, and Will, if he's on the phone, are all how to say this, actuary wannabes. So
No.
compliment.
Is that true, Will?
I think it is. I mean, I find this stuff very interesting.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, the presentation was good. So whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
So I will say that what we talked about earlier was that if in fact the House is coming up with something, then I'm not sure that we should be spending time trying to come up with something. So by the end of next week, I will have a better sense of whether they in fact have something to present to us, because by March 10th, March 12th, we have to have something in place from either side. So if that makes sense to everybody. Senator Clarkson?
So I understand actually that the House is close on the pre-funding teachers' other provided employee benefits, but not retirement.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I could, I think that we've made a ton of progress on the pre-funding and getting us to that, and I will be testifying in front of House GovOps. I did a little bit today, and I'm going to go into a little more of the weeds tomorrow, although I sprinkled this with GASB, IBNR, all sorts of terms that ADEC that I probably shouldn't use, but I will try to restrain myself. But they heard from Chris today, they heard from Erica, they heard from me. And I think that the response has been overwhelmingly positive on this. There might be some tweaking of the details. We're asking for some money up front. You'd be surprised if I didn't. But I think this is a good thing to provide sustainability to the healthcare plan, because over time, if you just pay what's called the pay-go, just pay the claims that you have now, and you're going to end up with more retirees, increase in healthcare inflation costs that you won't hit, that's going to take such a bite out of the budget. The next response will be, we got to cut these services. And I think there's a way to move forward on this that provides pre-funding and provides more security in healthcare. And for the committee members that may not have heard this before, I believe that healthcare is a right, and everyone should have healthcare across this state and across the country. And this is a step on that, and taking care of what I have some ability to participate in that, and you folks have the opportunity to weigh in on this. And I hope as we move forward that you'll be able to support the pre-funding plans.
Okay, okay. Yep, that makes sense. So I hesitate to spend any more time on this today, unless people have more questions and want to take more testimony until we find out for sure what it is that the House is doing. I mean, the pre-funding is, if that's what they're doing, then we will continue to take testimony on the pension part of it. But does that make sense, committee?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Did you just, I'm just curious, because sadly I had to leave Chris's presentation at 12:30. Is that slide deck available for us to see?
I was going to ask them to print it out and send it to us.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Yeah, but if you'd be kind enough to do that as chair, that would be great.
I will.
Yeah.
And it should be on our SGO website if we could.
Yeah.
So,
But-
Madam, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I tend to
Go ahead.
interrupt on Zoom, so I apologize. I interrupt to begin with, and Zoom just makes it even harder for me. But you heard from me last week, and or the week before. Time is kind of compressing here, but you heard, our presentation at length, and you haven't heard from the employee groups. So I think it might be wise to wait and see what's going on, and they can respond to that. But I think in fairness, that the employee group should have equal time, so to speak, and have the ability to present their perspective. And so I would encourage that going forward.
Oh, we definitely will.
Thank you.
I just would like, if they're coming up with something for us to respond to, then that's different than, because right now what the employee groups would be responding to is the proposals that are out there. So does that make sense?
Yes.
We would never ignore the employee groups.
Thank you.
How could we? We're sitting looking at them here.
Yeah, they all look like little
They're in our face.
dots.
They're in our face and in our
So,
phone.
yeah, look at them. coming in now.
They pop right up, right? Just the minute.
Right. So
You
given
just
that,
call
then
up.
given that, I'm going to give us the rest of the afternoon off. But committee would like to go over what we're going to do next week. And just for the people who are interested in this retirement issue, I did have it scheduled for Thursday at 3:30. So if they have come up with something that we will respond to, that they're sending us, then we will not have it on the agenda next Thursday. If they have not, we will have it back on the agenda next Thursday. And Gail will send you a reminder invitation. Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. All right, because we don't want to put it on the agenda for Thursday if they are actually coming up with something that they're going to send to us, because we won't have anything to respond to. Okay, great. Thank you. So that will be on potentially next Thursday. So then committee, here's what we're going to be doing next week. At 1, and everybody can stay with us. We love to have you staying with us, but you don't feel like you have to. So thank you for joining us. Bye.
Yeah.
Tuesday, we're going to have a vote on the Preparedness Bill, hopefully, and take up the issue of mixed martial arts, notaries, and OPR. And then on Wednesday, we had to move it till 2:00 because of the meeting with Dr. Levine in the afternoon. Yes?
Before you leave Tuesday, is that also going to do, and maybe I just didn't hear it because I was sort of spacing. I apologize. You mentioned the notaries, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I spaced at that moment.
Yep. So kind of that, whatever that issues are with OPR and Secretary of State. Senator Calmer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are we going to hear from a guy? Let me open my email. Rex
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, he has gotten an invite.
Good, thank you.
Senator Rahm, did you have a question?
Madam Chair, just I want to apologize because I did have a side conversation with the Speaker of the House to try and understand about this subcommittee. Just so she knew that we're getting word that there's a subcommittee, and she wanted me to convey that that's not true. And I asked if there was any more clarification, and she said just that it's not true. So I just want to put that on there for the record.
Yep. Well, I will.
That's what I thought I tried to convey earlier, but
well,
yeah, it's different. It's clearly they're having some conversations, but it's not about retirement.
All right, I will try and talk to people. That is not what I was told this morning.
I'm just so worried with video lingering for the weekend.
Yeah.
You may think we know something that we don't, but I know of nothing, and I was told to say that we don't have information.
Okay, thanks.
And
so when it's hard enough to communicate when we're in the State House, but this is impossible. And anyway, so Wednesday, we're going to have a joint hearing. Yes, what? Allison?
No, I said, we're with you. We're with you. We get it. We're supporting the challenge that I was making sympathetic noises.
Okay. So Wednesday, we are going to do a walkthrough of the draft bill for the Agency of Public Safety, and we'll be meeting with the House so that they only have to do the walkthrough once. We will not be having any witnesses or any discussion, just clarifications of the bill, because I want those are the witnesses to come to us but because DPS is so embroiled right now with the pandemic response, we thought that it would lessen their time if they could do a walkthrough to all of us at the same time. And then we will meet separately after the walkthrough with them. And then Thursday, hopefully we'll finish up the juvenile bill on public records and do relook at the municipal pilot program and potentially retirement and temporary workers. And then on Friday, we're going to finish up the elections and vote on that. Does that sound okay?
Sounds,
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Well, have a nice weekend and you get out of school early today.
Right.
What a treat. Unfortunately, it's like 0 degrees outside.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
it isn't
not.
like
It's
we're going to
not
go
funny
play
either.
baseball or something, but it's okay.
it's,
Right.
it's up to 18 degrees here, Anthony.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I'm gonna-
balmy.
I'm gonna take a nap.
I'm at least gonna get out of this chair. I know that.
Yeah.
Committee, wish me luck. I have my first high school hockey game to rep tomorrow in Hartford.
Really?
Hey,
Wow.
oh, I would come and see you.
You can't. They don't know that they're not allowing anybody in.
I know, but as you drive through Woodstock, blow me a kiss.
I sure will.
In your 63-foot truck
Yeah,
through
no,
Woodstock. Make sure you
78
take
foot.
your truck.
78. Happily, he can't do that yet. But I want to wish all of you happy Valentine's Day, because if I was with you, you know what you'd have.
Chocolate.
You'd have
True.
chocolate with raspberry centers, and you'd have, of course, still the Godiva box from my sister-in-law, which is still waiting for us. She sent another, mammoth Godiva box just for us. So there we are.
Next year.
Okay.
Gail
Thank
has
you.
her hand up. I don't know if Gail wants.
Yeah, I think Gail wants to. Yeah, I was just about to call on her. Thank you.
You're muted, Gail.
You're muted, Gail.
We can't hear you.
You caught me. I echo everybody's sentiments. Happy Valentine's Day. Madam Chair, you were saying that we have temporary workers next week. That actually we took off of the agenda on Wednesday. So
Yeah, we took it off on Wednesday.
so you can take a look at that and let me know when you want to, where
Okay,
you
I
want
was
to add
gonna
it back in.
I was gonna put it out on Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because on Wednesday, we won't have time. If we can't even meet until 2 o'clock and then we have this walkthrough with the House, I don't think we'll have time for anything else afterwards.
Can I ask, you talked about doing the elections bill on Friday, going through it and voting on it, which is fine with me, but we're gonna do it all in one day like that?
I hope so.
Okay,
I-
and
I
I'm just
think-
curious,
Are we going to get?
I'm wondering if the mail-in voting part is gonna be separate or it's gonna be a part of the big bill. I'm just curious. I forget where we left it.
Everything,
I hope it's all in the same bill.
you mean mail out, not
Yeah,
mail
true.
in. It's
Right.
mail out.
Mail out and bring in.
The it's all one bill.
Okay,
And
I just couldn't remember.
Everything else that's in that bill, as I remember it, relates to that, is supportive of that. I mean, some of them are technical changes that we might want
Right.
anyway, but they're all supportive of that. I don't think there's anything in the bill that was not in there. Can you think of anything? I mean, we
No,
took out the party issues
Right,
we
and
took
we
out the poison pills.
right.
yeah. And we didn't address a number of the things that were brought up to us in the bill.
Right.
So I think that it's all one bill. And
Okay,
And I
I'm
don't
not questioning, I'm not opposed to it or anything. I
Yeah.
just couldn't remember if we decided to put them all together or not.
yeah, because it doesn't make sense to have a bill that would allow processing 30 days ahead of time
Right, if you're not
if
gonna
you
do
had
the
nothing to
mail out.
process. I
Right,
mean, that's so. And I hope that we can, I know there's some disagreement on a couple items in the bill, and we may or may not have a unanimous vote, but I think we can get through the whole thing.
cool, okay,
And we'll have all the same people invited, and most people were in agreement with most of it.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
because it would be nice to get it done before crossover. I mean,
Yeah, I
before
think
we
that's
go home.
important.
We're gonna have
Before we go
meetings
home.
before crossover. I mean, we haven't
Huh?
even set the date for crossover yet.
Yes, we have. It's the
Oh,
12th.
Joint Rules hasn't set that yet. Just
Okay.
say we're
All right.
on the way to it, but it hasn't been done yet.
Getting close, as they say in the house.
I thought they told us that it would be, that we were gonna use the same schedule, and it would be the week that we came back.
Got it. Well, it's next thing on our Joint Rules meeting is all I know, is that it's hanging out there.
Okay,
But you always know things ahead of the rest of us, so.
I guess after today, I wouldn't trust any of my information.
Yeah, she knew ahead of time, it just wasn't accurate.
Yeah, I guess
We had our go-tos that told us that was different than sadly what we've been led to believe.
I got the same text, Allison.
Yeah,
about the
about,
pensions.
Refunding the OPEB.
Yeah, well,
Anyway,
okay, all
I
right,
want someone to fund my OPEB.
okay.
See you
Have a
later.
nice weekend. Happy Valentine's Day. Keisha, I'll look at that
It
now.
will